I am Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen. But don't worry, I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed, just like the guest I have on the other line. This guy's been on the show several times. I want to say the first time was when his book came out around 2016 or 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Estrogeneration. The book became a favorite. I became a big fan of this guy, and we have him back on today. I'm talking about Dr. Anthony J. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It was 2017, good memory. And it's still to this day selling more copies than ever, which is actually impressive and surprising to me, but it works. It's culturally relevant. It's always relevant. Get rid of estrogen, fake estrogen in your system.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I was telling this to someone, someone who works with me, Gina Gratt. We were talking about books and the whole thing because she's doing children's books now and the whole thing. And she said, when did your book, meaning my book, when did it stop selling? And I said, well, that first year was a boon. It was just crazy. And the second year, when they told me, okay, your book might make a few $1,000s, but the boon is, well, it was another boon.
Mm.
We
Yep.
probably, in that second year, we probably sold 80% of what we,
Wow.
which does not happen. Maybe I exaggerate. Maybe it was like 70, 75%. But in the book world, that does not happen. And then, here we are 11 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and the book still finds audience year in and year out, which I'm happy about. And here you are, what, 6, 7 years down the road on your book. And when you put a book out that's quality, that tells the truth, which Estrogeneration does, it's going to just keep, it's just audiences are going to keep finding it. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah. In fact, did you see that new Consumer Reports study that came out looking at phthalates and BPA in different food items? They tested 85 food items, and this was just like a few weeks ago, and
Right.
they found 79% of foods in the supermarket that they tested had BPA. They still have freaking BPA. And the Consumer Reports was like, hey, this is a good thing because back in 2009, when we did this test, 100% of the foods had BPA. Now it's down to 79%. I'm like, man, that's a lot of BPA. And they also tested phthalates, and over 99% of the foods they tested had phthalates, and they're just as bad as BPA. And I've been talking about this since 2017. If people have heard us talking, Vinny, and they should go back and listen to those old episodes too. We talked about this a lot. Plastics, drinking liquids out of plastics, right? Like, a lot of the personal care product fragrances have a lot of these estrogen mimicking chemicals, hormone disrupting chemicals. Men and women both. Nobody wants their hormones disrupted, but that's what's happening.
Look, I mean, it was on one of these shows when, I said to you, and we can do it again right now because the audience is always different, right? But we were doing one of the shows, and this was after my cancer, and I was very, very concerned about everything that went into my body. So why I started my own vitamin company. And I said to you, and I can't remember the number. I want to say it had number 6 inside the triangle, but I went, oh, look,
Number 7. Yeah, number
I
7.
have this Nalgene bottle right here. They're saying that this is BPA free. It was written on the bottle, BPA free. And you said, turn it over and tell me which number is written on the bottom. And I looked and it was like number 7. And you went, that's probably one of the worst ones. And that was supposed to be considered the best one, right? You want to, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What did
No,
we?
that's exactly. Well, there's analogs to BPA. So you can have something that's BPA free, but then it has BPS or BPF or BPAF, and those are at least as bad, if not worse, than BPA. Some studies actually show they're worse for hormone disruption. So companies are playing the shell game where they're changing from BPA free, and then they're putting worse chemicals in there in these plastics. So drink out of stainless steel, drink out of glass, filter your drinking water too, because there's a lot of pipes. Like, yeah, there you go. Now it's funny. When I was talking to Dr. Drew, and he had the same thing. Remember Dr. Drew's podcast? You actually connected me with Dr. Drew.
Yeah.
And he had a water bottle right there in his studio. And I was there in person that day in LA. I visited you actually when I was in LA at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, he had the same thing. He's drinking plastics right there in the studio, and I talked him out of it. You know, he's changed his mind, which is really good for him because a lot of people are stubborn and they don't want to change their mind. But yeah, I mean, it's prevalent, right? It's just everywhere. People just assumed it was okay because the government says it's okay, and it's not going to cause you to, you know, get man boobs tomorrow. It's a slow process, you know, but being
Right.
exposed to a lot of estrogen might cause infertility 10 years from now. It might cause low testosterone. It might cause, but it's slow, but it does cause these problems. I mean, it's well established.
Well, look, I mean, that day when you convinced me, because, you know, there I am, you know, creating vitamins that don't have, you know, titanium dioxide and the whole thing. And then you're going, I threw that thing away right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we were off the air, I left the house. My wife goes, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "I'm heading over to REI." She goes, "What are you getting?" And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Water bottles." She goes, "We got a thing full of water bottles." Like, no, 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 Anthony, I'm goodbye. You can see this one. You see how banged it up. I'm showing you
Oh
how
yeah, I like it. Looks like
this thing has
mine.
been dropped a million times. I bought two of them. And the
Mm-hmm.
other one, I gave a guy came to help me work around the house, and it was like 100 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
No, that guy's no longer with us. Ozzy. He was a friend of Adam Carolla's.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ozzy used to come over to the house, and I gave him the other one to use. And when we
Yep.
finished the job, he was like, "You know, here's your." I said, "Ozzy, it's a
Mm-hmm.
gift."
Yeah.
So Ozzy took it, and he passed away about a year later. I wish I hadn't given him that damn good water jug. But look, I mean, this was a one-time purchase. This couldn't have cost me. Well, what do you think this cost? $30, $20?
Exactly.
You know, one-time
Probably 20.
purchase. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been using the same one. And as you could tell, it's been banged up pretty good. Still holds water,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know?
Better for the planet, better for your hormones, more importantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and glass works too, but glass is harder to bang up, right? Like it's harder to travel with. And
Well, you get one bang out of glass. That's you know, and it's detrimental to everything. So yeah, you know, we do have glass, you know, pitchers and everything else when we serve water and the whole thing. But
Mhm.
again, it's a little more expensive, but it's quality of life. Now, we could sit here and talk about water bottles all day long, but there are bigger problems than that. I had a guy in here, Anthony, doing a podcast about 3 months ago, a British gentleman, and he he was kayaking around Greenland or Iceland. I can't remember which one.
Nice.
And he since he was doing it, he got this group of scientists said, wait a minute, you're going to be you're going to take months and you're going to go around. Yeah, oh yeah, I'm doing the whole. They said, do us a favor, we'll pay you to scoop up. Um, what kind of shit
Mm.
was it? It was not whale shit, porpoise or something, maybe seal shit or something that
Mhm.
collects along the shore, right?
Right. Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah, you'll pay me to sure, I'll do that." They found plastics,
Yep.
and that's when I looked around and went, "We're fucked."
Yeah. Yeah.
When you can find plastic in the most, what you would think would be the most natural place on this
Mhm.
planet. Can you, I mean, you would have to go to Milford Sound, New Zealand before you found a place more natural, right?
Right. Right.
You know,
Well,
or Oslo.
they found them in polar bears too. You know, I talk about that in my book. The polar bears have been found with these phthalates and parabens and the sea lions and all this in northern Alaska. It's because the ocean acts like a blood vessel, right? It has arteries, it flows, it moves this stuff around, and we're just dumping so much plastic nonsense into the water. And again, it's in our drinking waters too. You don't even have to filter that stuff. And it's there's scientists. There's Michael Skinner. Do you know Dr. Michael Skinner? He gave a TED talk on epigenetics and stuff. He thinks we're literally going to go extinct as humans. That's what he thinks. I don't think so. I think there's people like us that are more aware of this and paying attention. But I mean, he's pretty pessimistic about it.
You know, look, I look around and go, well, you know, we're going to make it, and you know, people like my daughter and your sons and all that, they're going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
but it won't be as pretty as it was for us. And it's not that pretty for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I don't like the way, and I hate to be that old guy that's doing that. Oh, the world is because it was fucked up when we were kids too, right? We just didn't pay attention to it. But
yeah. Even Greta Thunberg or whatever has been complaining about it. So it's not just the old people.
right, you know,
It's not just us.
exactly. Unfortunately, Greta is yelling about it into a void, right? Because the people that want to, the people that put Greta up to it, they're pushing an agenda.
Yeah.
And then the other side's going, we don't like Greta, so we're not going to pay attention. We're just going to turn her into a meme, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So either way, Greta doesn't win, right? And the same as old man Vinnie doesn't win. And Anthony J, look, I mean, you and I were talking about it off the air. I don't get canceled because how do you cancel me, right? I'm cancel free. You can't get canceled. You're a father and you never get caught cheating. You're never out there philandering and you're not on Epstein's airplane or whatever, so we're not going to get canceled. We're good. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, I was telling you off the air and I'm getting ready to go away from it. Instagram just decided, 5-6 months ago to start basically deplatforming me by not showing my material to anyone else. Right. And instead of my numbers going up, they go down by a certain percentage every day. And you can go, oh, shut up, Vinny, stop belly aching. Hey, I'm not belly aching. I'm just stopping Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm just like, I might throw a picture up every now and again, but I'm not, I do these stay motivated things. I'm moving it to a different platform. Mm-hmm. The same thing with YouTube. I don't know, it's not that big, but I got 25,000 subscribers on YouTube. They're not even showing my people, those subscribers write to me and go, why don't we know when you put stuff up? Because they're not telling you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not telling you. You subscribe to me and they're saying, hey, we don't think this guy is good for you. So you want to be the fucking nanny state? Knock yourself out, YouTube. Guess what? I just signed up for Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
same, Vinny, same.
Yeah. Go on.
No, I mean, I have the same thing, man. They do a ton of censorship, and it's not just that; it's shadow banning, meaning like when you put something out, they don't show it to people. Same with my Instagram, same with my YouTube. I don't even have Facebook. I've not been on Facebook for years. I use my wife's Facebook sometimes for their marketplace thing, but that's literally all I do with that. But yeah, man, it's frustrating. The good news is there's a lot of people that are finding us and they're finding out the information and the truth. But yeah, you have to be very intentional these days about it. And the government has an agenda. The pharmaceutical companies have an agenda. Those two agendas are lockstep, and for some unknown reason, and these companies are falling in line with a lot of these social media companies are falling in line with that. Yeah,
look, and right now, I'm going back heavy on Twitter. I used to just, up until today, I used to just answer questions. I'm going to start putting the material I was putting on Instagram on Twitter because it seems to be more open, or X or whatever they're calling it this week. Mm-hmm. And people might go, oh, this is political. We don't like Twitter. I don't give a fuck about politics. I don't care if you're on the right or you're on the left. I don't care. I believe everyone should be where they want to be. I'm just trying to get a message out. And these guys, I don't know if they're on the right or the left, Facebook or what have you. I have my thoughts on where they might be. I don't care. You're not showing my material. I'm gonna put my material somewhere else. It's just that simple, And by the way, they'll probably at some point take over Twitter, and they'll probably somehow take over Rumble. Fine. I'll go find the next Rumble. Maybe it'll be called Grumble, or we don't know what they're going to do, right? But so it's good to, and look, I know that Sean Baker doesn't, he hasn't put anything on Instagram in like a month.
Yeah, and didn't Dr. Drew shift off, and isn't he exclusively on Rumble, or like most of his stuff? He's got a big audience.
I don't know. I heard him mention Rumble. He didn't mention to that me private. I was listening to something with that, but you see, Dr. Drew got caught up in the whole,
virus. Yeah.
The coronavirus thing.
Mhm.
And by the way, everything he said was actually what we learned to be the truth,
Mhm.
right? And then,
Yeah.
people go, oh, Dr. Drew is, Hitlerian. Or so. I was like, and it's like, wait a minute. I know that guy.
Mhm.
The guy's a friend of mine. I don't think he's Hitlerian. I
Yeah.
would have noticed that over a drink or something,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It never came.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
introduced you to Drew. Did you get any
Oh
feeling
yeah.
that the guy was a Führer of any sort?
He's great. No, he's very thoughtful. Like he really thought through the things. I mean, initially when I talked to him, he was not convinced that plastics were bad. He didn't think fragrances should be avoided. Any of that. He's changed his mind. I mean, he's done one while we were talking. I mean, literally while we were talking, you could start seeing the wheels turning, and he completely changed. And that's the sign of somebody who's intelligent, right? They're presented with data
Right.
that is different than what they thought, they change their mind. And that's again pretty rare, pretty rare these days. I like him. He's a good guy.
Look, I even, for the audience, you know this, but I'll tell the audience, I switched from one type of pine tar soap to a different one. But before I bought one bar, I wrote to you and said, hey, here's
Hmm.
the ingredients
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
in this pine tar soap. And I also use Mother's, you know, I think it's called Grandma's Lye Soap. I wrote to you and said, these are the two new soaps I'm considering.
Hmm.
Give me a yay or a nay. And you told me they're both fine. And by the way,
Yeah.
folks, so that you don't have to write to me, and Debbie or Leona will put this on my Instagram. I'm sorry, Instagram, on my, what do we call that?
X.
Amazon page. They're
Oh,
going to put it on
Amazon.
my Amazon page. The
Hmm.
soap I now use is called Packers Pine Tar Soap, because the other stuff, Grandpa's Pine Tar, they changed the formula or something. I don't know what they did. And
Yeah.
I'm very, and you might call me a kook. Oh, really? You care about with what you wash with? There's a reason why. Anthony, why don't you explain, fragrances and chemicals in the stuff that's
Hmm.
supposed to keep us clean?
Yeah, I mean, the skin is our largest organ, unless you're morbidly obese, in which case fat cells are your largest organ. But most people, their skin is their largest organ, and skin absorbs hormones and hormone mimicking chemicals. In fact, they did a sunscreen study, Vinny, after I published my book, but it was right after I published. They showed that one application of sunscreen 7 days later, your oxybenzone levels in your blood are higher than the government safety limits. And that's the chemical in sunscreen that I've always railed against. And I always told people, look, this stuff acts like estrogen. It's illegal in a bunch of countries. It's killing off coral reefs. They pay more attention to the coral reef die off than like human infertility, and like in Hawaii and New Zealand and places. But because we're killing the reefs too. I mean, that's a bad thing. I'm all about saving the reefs, but I'm also about just making oxybenzone illegal across the board. But one application, 7 days later, blood levels still above the government safety limits. That says it all.
I've been railing against sunscreens since the 80s. I had a radio show called Talking Fitness, and I had a famous doctor that used to come on, Dr. Nia Terazakas. She was one of the forefathers. She was from Tulane University. I was down in New Orleans with the radio show.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the forefathers of Rogaine,
Oh, sure.
using minoxidil on the scalp. And when she was studying it, she was mixing Rogaine and Retin A and causing hair growth on guys that didn't. But of course, they didn't put Retin A in it, because if you sweat and it drips into your eyes, good luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never forget that. She came on my show and she was talking about that. And I said, look, what about sunscreen? And she was like, well, it does protect you from the sun, from getting cancer, but the payoff is this stuff is not good for you. And I was
Yeah.
like, is there any of it that's good for you? And she was like, I don't know, but I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, what? I said, look, I'm Italian, so I get away with it. You're not Italian, Anthony. It's very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
You're the whitest human being I've ever met.
True.
And
But speaking of polar bears,
I mean, you put gingers to shame, right? You're the
yeah,
most ginger human. Can we still say ginger? Is that off the table too?
good for me.
Okay, well, folks, he's as ginger as you can get. And, you know, I remember my best friend growing up, Jim, he was just like you, Anthony. And we would both go to the beach, and that night Jim was in pain, right? And I
Mhm.
said to Nina, I said, look, you're my best friend. We like to go boating together and stuff. And what do you think? And she was like, he's got to start wearing shirts and
Yeah.
pants. And
Yeah.
back then, they didn't have like all the stuff that they have now, these sunscreen clothes
Mhm.
that are very light that you can wear in the summer. But wouldn't that be the way to go? Or is there
Yeah.
anything people can use like yourself?
I do sun shirts, sun hats, sun gloves, sun buff on my neck, all the things. But I set a timer. I do 20 minutes of shirt off, as much sun as I can get when I'm out fishing and stuff, because I do a lot of fishing. And then I go the complete. I mean, I literally set a timer, but as soon as that 20 minutes is up, man, I go the other direction. So I make an intentional effort to get that sunshine. It's good for your hormones. It's good for your metabolism. It's good, good, good. It's actually detoxifying too. A lot of people don't realize, like if you have tattoos and you go in the sun all the time, they fade away because that ink is being broken down by the sunshine. That's a detox mechanism. It happens with garbage that builds up in your cells too, and shit that you're being exposed to in the environment, like the stuff we're talking about from plastics. Those things form aggregates, and sunshine helps to break those aggregates down into smaller chunks, helps your body flush them out. Sunshine's good on a lot of different levels.
Okay, I want to get back a little bit to cosmetics, but before we do that, let me remind the audience that this show is brought to you by Villa Capelli Olive Oil, the longest running sponsor of the show. Villa Capelli Olive Oil. You want to talk about something that's good for your body? I don't care what Anthony J has to say about this. Villa Capelli is pure 100% olive oil. Most oils in this country that are commercially sold at your big grocery stores are going to be cut, in some cases, up to 40% with a seed oil. That's a fact, folks. And our government, we were talking about this, our government lets this stuff go by because everybody's money hungry. Folks, Villa Capelli is the real deal. Go check them out. If you want to save 10%, put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. You'll get 10% off every single time, not just the first time. If you spend more than $125 after the discount, which, let me do the math, about $140, $145, you'll still be above 125. They'll give you free shipping. So plenty of ways to save over at villacapelli.com. villacapelli.com. Let them know we sent you. VINNIE, no wimpy Y on Vinny, and you'll get 10% off every single time. We're talking to Dr. Anthony J. Before we get back into who he is, I'm going to tell you who he is. This guy was at the Mayo Clinic for a long time and did a lot of research there. I don't have your resume in front of me, Anthony, but brag about yourself for a second. Where did you go to school? Let everyone know who you are before we get into these cosmetics and everything else.
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually went to Boston University Medical School, which is across the river from the main campus, and I have a PhD. If I spent 5 years researching sex hormones and cholesterol, that's my PhD my specialty. And then, after that, I went to Mayo Clinic, and now I'm completely independent. I get so many clients. DNA consulting is most of my work, and I do a lot of speaking and of course writing and just different things. But yeah, I mean, the consulting company has blown up in the past 5 years, and it's I've had a crazy. Usually I have like a 2 month waiting list on that, and some of that's thanks to you too. We've talked about that in the past too. Like
Yeah.
we've looked at your DNA and things like that.
Yeah, and by the way, you did that off of my 23.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 23 me? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, yeah. Or
Yeah.
ancestry.com. But yeah.
And you took that and you said, hey, I'm going to do a deeper dive into this. And
Mm-hmm.
Serena was actually on that podcast, and you were saying stuff and she was freaking out. You're like, you like salt, don't you? And Serena was like, oh my God, he oversalts everything. There's extra salt in this bottle right now.
Uh-huh.
I put my
Electrolytes.
electrolytes in the bottle every day, and
Yeah. Yeah.
winter and summer, it just doesn't matter. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I'll learn so much from you. That's why I like to keep bringing you back on the show. And folks, I'm not kidding. I write to this man and go, hey, I'm thinking about this product. What do you think? Because that's how much I believe in Anthony J. I don't use, I use deodorant because I'm not a lunatic. Um, and even that is like a natural, it doesn't have,
Mhm.
put them in or anything else.
Right.
And it's got some kind of natural smell to it. But, let's talk about that. We have deodorant.
Mhm.
People
Yep.
squirt perfume onto themselves.
Yep.
My wife smells like, 20 different things. She's this face cream, that shampoo,
Hmm.
on and on. I'm
Hmm.
almost bald, so I just use the same, soap in my hair that I use
Hmm.
in my pits and parts. So go ahead and explain that a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on your genes, first of all. So I'm glad we talked about genetics a little bit, because some people have terrible estrogen genes, real high breast cancer risks genes, gynecomastia genes, man boob genes, um, all kinds of problems with their estrogen genes. So those fragrances are much more problematic for some people than other people. And then, of course, there's good fragrances and bad fragrances. I mean, there's plenty of good companies out there that have essential oils and they have things in their products that are totally natural and they're not messing up your hormones. But the dominant, the dominant companies and the bigger fragrances and perfume companies, deodorants, soaps, shampoos. I mean, yeah, the fragrances are one of the top sources of estrogenic exposures that people have on a daily basis. Remember, if it was just once a week or something, it's not that big of a deal. Your body flushes this out. But some people are doing this stuff every single day, and these low quality fragrances are full of estrogens. And then they're drinking out of plastic, and then they're putting on the sunscreen, and then they're not exercising, because exercise helps you flush this stuff out. They're not going out in the sun. Sunshine helps you get this. Saunas really help, like sweating. That stuff helps you detox this stuff. And there's just plastic. People are cooking they're brewing coffee in plastics, and on, right? It's just a cumulative exposure. It builds up in your fat cells, by the way, too. So as people, detox off, it might take a few weeks, it might take 6 months for you to get that stuff clear out of your system.
Yeah, it is nutty how many different things. I know I don't use them, but I see what my wife uses. And like whenever I talk to her about it, she'll go, "You don't understand. I need this." It's like, well, no, She goes, "My skin gets very dry." It's like, well, if you just didn't use those products on your skin will start regenerating, you know, the good old natural way. But good
Hmm.
luck convincing a 62-year-old woman of any of this stuff, right? She knows
Yeah,
what
for
she
sure.
knows. And
Well, and you're right. Like, you get addicted. Like, I used to use lip balm stuff.
right.
And if I start using that, I have to keep using it. Otherwise, my lips are super chapped all the time. And I just have to stop cold turkey and let them get chapped for a little bit and get used to it and then get over it. And then they heal and then I move on. But animal fats help too. Like a lot of these companies have seed oils in the damned lotions and stuff. And people are rubbing all these canola oil, soybean oil type stuff on their skin. And you're an animal. You're not a plant. You know what I mean? Like, uh, you're definitely not a canola plant. And so, you know, you don't want to be doing that either with a lot of these seed oils that are bad to eat in your diet. And most people are constantly eating them. And they're not ideal for your skin either. Remember, olive oil is not a seed. Olives are fruits. That's a fruit oil. That's good for you. I'm not talking about olive oil when I say seed oils.
It's interesting. I was at some low carb event, and I just grabbed a sample, because everyone's trying to throw a sample at me. Hey, Vinny, try my product, and the whole thing. And I always graciously take it, especially if it's a food. I'll take it and yeah, I'll try it later and the whole thing and toss it away because it's got allulose and crap in it. I'm not gonna give myself the shits on purpose. So they hand me this thing and I just threw it. And when I got home, I said to Serena, I went, "Oh, I got this sample. Here you go." It was a cream. It is made of tallow. It's tallow is like the ingredient, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she used it and she goes, "Oh my God, this stuff is good."
Yep.
And literally called the company and said, "Send me." And by the way, folks, I would do a free ad for them right now. I just don't know the name of it. It's upstairs. It's 2 floors up in a bathroom. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Serena's not here today, so I can't even yell up to her to bring it down. But she now uses this product, which makes me very happy. And they make two or three products, right? All made out of tallow. So
Right.
folks,
Yep.
hey guys, if you're the guys that own that company and you hear this podcast, if you want to come on and maybe advertise on the show, I'm a believer in your product. I'll even get Dr. J to vet it before we bring it on. because I listened to this guy that intently. Before we go on, because I want to talk about estrogen in young men, because that seems to be a problem.
Mhm.
The reason I started thinking about you was someone wrote to me and said, "Hey, Anthony Huberman, is his name Anthony Huberman?"
Andrew Humor. Yeah.
Yeah, Huberman Lab. He's
Mhm.
saying that if you touch receipts, you're getting estrogen. And I wrote back, "Yeah, Anthony J told me that 7 years ago." You
Exactly.
know, so
Yeah.
and I'm like sitting there going, "This guy did the work. He writes it in a book, and now Huberman has taken credit for this, right?" And
Mm-hmm.
by the way, I yell about this all the time because everyone's a low carb expert. And when I go to listen to these talks at these low carb things, okay, this expert stole that from Nina Teicholz. Oh, wait, that expert stole that from Gary Taubes. Oh, wait,
Mm-hmm.
that's Gary and Nina. Now they're stealing from both of them. Oh shit, they took that from my book. It's amazing how these people read 2 or 3 books
Mm-hmm.
and they became self-anointed experts. And I think
Right.
Huberman is doing that same sort of thing. He's taking your work or
Mm-hmm.
something like you, but I think it's your work, and he's
Mm-hmm.
using it. You want to talk a little bit about receipts and why we should never touch them?
Yeah, for sure. And this is true of coffee cups too. These paper cups and paper receipts, they're not really paper. They spray a thin layer of BPA on them. Um, and or phthalates, right? If it says BPA free, it's almost always going to be plastic containing phthalates. And so, yeah, even touching them does increase absorption of BPA. They've done blood studies. It's very well documented. Yeah, and again, with this new Consumer Reports study, I actually did a YouTube video on it because it's just such a blockbuster study showing how much plastics we really have. Of course, it was all the processed foods. Like if you go to McDonald's and stuff, all that stuff is just loaded with phthalates and plastics. It was like 30,000 nanograms.
Wow.
And even some of the conventional like stuff that you think is okay at the supermarket, it's surprising. It's worth looking at the 85 foods that they tested, but it was a predictable pattern. But again, you know, that's the reason. It's just plastic. Even a lot of these masks that people wear on their faces, sometimes they have plastics in them. A lot of them are made from plastic materials. You got to watch out for that.
So I don't want to get into a political discussion. I don't do politics here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but our young men are becoming more and more feminine, and this is
Mm-hmm.
a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're starting to see it, right? More and
Yep.
more.
Yep.
Can you first explain how we're seeing it
Yep.
and what's actually happening?
Yeah. In the 1980s, the average male in America was 500 on their total testosterone, approximately 500. It was like 535 or something. Right now, the average American is like hovering around 300, maybe even a little bit lower
Wow.
in that same age class. In fact, they've lowered the normal range down to 250. So if you get a 260 on your testosterone, they tell you that's normal. And that was not the case just 5 or 10 years ago, and certainly not 20 or 30 years ago. And based on our paleo ancestors with the bone records and things, our testosterone used to be closer to 2000,
Wow.
1500 to 2000. We have that data. But the point is, today it's becoming lower and lower, and that's a form of feminization. If you lower testosterone, that's a type of feminization, and it changes the size of sex organs and it changes anogenital distance. And the Shauna Swan wrote a whole book just on that. That's her research, and it's becoming more and more common to see that in our culture. And the other thing is it causes apathy, to be honest. One of the unfortunate things, it causes men to just not care about sex or about anything really. It causes lack of motivation, just total apathy. At least in animals, you can even see this with animal studies. Like when you give them higher doses of these artificial estrogen chemicals, you get apathy. And I think a lot of people in our culture would recognize, like, yeah, I was around 30 years ago and I'm around today, and I see the difference, right? I can see the apathy in a lot of different contexts. And I think it's not getting any better unless people pay attention to this. And of course, the government people have kids too. Like nobody wants this for their kids. We just need to be aware of it as a society and start making changes.
Yeah, we're seeing where, parents aren't letting their kids play football.
Hmm.
Males. Um, I think California is trying to push a bill right now to say no tackle football until a certain age, which, by the way, I'm not so sure that I'm against,
Hmm.
right? Because I don't think, Pop Warner and we got these little tiny kids banging. It's archaic. My parents didn't let me play Pop Warner. I started in seventh grade, which
Hmm.
I was the ripe old age of 13, 12. I went into 13 that year.
Hmm.
These kids that are 6 and 7 and 8,
Hmm.
probably not a good idea, but still, you know, kids aren't going into football at all.
Yep. Right.
Right? Which when I was a kid, every kid wanted to go into football and things like driving. And I know you
Hmm.
can sit there and go, oh, come on, Vin, driving, who gives a fuck? You get an Uber. That Anthony, you're younger than me. I'm close to Dr. Drew's age. We could not wait to get our license. It was like
Hmm.
I started dreaming about my license when I was 13. And
Hmm.
back then, you got your license in Louisiana at 15. It was
Yep.
restricted. You couldn't drive after midnight and that sort of thing. But that was like the only restriction. Everything else was, you got a
Hmm.
license when you were 15,
Yep.
was freedom. A car license meant freedom. After you had that license, all you needed to do was figure out how to get somewhere between $500 and $700 to buy a car, a
Hmm.
used car, right?
Right.
And when you were industrious like I was, $750. I still own that car, by the way. It's a cool convertible, 1970
Nice.
to 71, and it's
I
all
think
broken
I've seen it.
down.
I've seen it. The red one.
No, 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 no. It was it's sitting in a barn at my brother's
Oh,
shop,
okay. Okay.
and
Maybe I haven't seen it. I
it
haven't seen it
needs a
then.
lot. It needs a lot of work. That car.
Gotcha. Oh, it's cool
Um,
that you have it. It's impressive.
yeah, I kept my first car because it's like, wow, why get rid of that? But the bottom line is that the car meant freedom. That freedom
Hmm.
meant that you might be able to get a girl in that car.
Hmm.
And I didn't know what to do with the girl in that car at that time, but I knew I had to do something, right? And I
Yeah.
figured I was going to be able to figure it out once I got a girl in that car, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you probably weren't thinking, period. But yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny because South Dakota, I think the legal driving age is 14, where I moved to just now, which is pretty impressive, almost kind of scary. Um, but yeah, apathy, right? Like nowadays, people, what's the age now? 18 years old. People still don't even care if they're getting their driver's. I mean, it depends on the state, but there's a lot of kids. I know there was a study where they said like the average age is 18 or something, and most of the kids getting the driver's license don't even want them anymore. And it's apathy, And you see it in men and women. Women have testosterone. It's not like it's just a masculine thing, too. And that declines after menopause dramatically sometimes. And so if you're already starting off with low testosterone and then you go into menopause or manopause, they call it for older men too, it's even worse. It just exacerbates these problems.
Well, look, I was just talking last week on this podcast. I had this girl, Laurie Fetrick, on, who was a bodybuilder. Laurie's my age.
Mm-hmm.
She was a bodybuilder back in the 80s down at Gold's Gym.
Mm-hmm.
She was ice on the American
Mm-hmm.
Gladiators. And
Cool.
Laurie, and I don't know if it's a wife or a girlfriend, but she goes, oh yeah, we still hammer down 2-3 times a week. And I'm like, oh, come on. You're way past. I said, how old is your wife or girlfriend? Let's say girlfriend, because I don't know if they're married. She goes, oh, she's in her 40s. And I went, but come on, Laurie, you're in your 60s. I'm with a 62-year-old. She goes, oh no, I take testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
low dose testosterone. She goes, I feel like I did back when I was a kid. And she goes,
Mm-hmm.
we're having regular sex.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I guess my next question, because that's the question of the audience, people ask me all the time. Now, personally, as you know, I've asked you about taking hormone replacement a lot, and I've asked every doctor I've ever spoken to because my hormones, my testosterone is very low. It
Mm-hmm.
has been low ever since chemo and cancer and everything else. It's just never popped back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I refuse to take it because I worry about it. I worry
Right.
about getting cancer again. What's the truth behind this? What is your truth, or what do you believe to be true with all this?
Yeah. Well, in your specific situation, everybody's situation is unique. And I would talk to Dr. Drew about it in your case, because obviously he's been in the same situation, I think. And he does a lot of research on that specific type of cancer and on and on. But for most men, if they have low testosterone, and women, of course, if they have low testosterone, natural is the best. Like, try and figure out ways to increase it naturally. Get off the sugar, get off the grains, like exercise, make sure you got the right vitamins, like most people are just vitamin deficient in a lot of different aspects. Just optimize your testosterone. Sometimes people have genetic issues, and that helps too, to look at your genes. But the point is, optimize it naturally as best you can. If you can't get it up past, if you're below 500 and you're doing everything you can, sometimes you need TRT. I'm a huge fan in that situation, men and women. And again, age amplifies that. And of course, there's always specific situations where I won't recommend it. But in general, if people need to kickstart or they need a helping hand with testosterone replacement, I'm a fan. Just got to be natural testosterone. You can't do some fake synthetic version of it, because that's oftentimes where the problems come in. And you can't overdose it. Sometimes people are overdoing it and trying to get crazy with it, but that's kind of a given.
Okay, I'm going to ask you those two questions, but let me just say this about me, which is always the odd thing. Whenever, by the way, I've been able to get it up past 300, and sometimes it's been at 325 because I have to get checked all the time for cancer. So I'm always saying, check that.
Right.
So I asked my general practitioner, I said, Doc, and she's a friend also. I said, listen, my testosterone is always in the dumper, right? We've never seen it hit 400. It's been around 250 sometimes, but lately I've been keeping it in the 300s. I still have erections. I still have sex whenever I want. No problem sexually. And she jokingly, because she's friends with Serena, she goes, "Oh, I know." Women talk, right?
No.
And I said, okay, so I have super low testosterone. I'm still getting erections. I'm still having sex. No problem. No erectile dysfunction whatsoever. And when I go to the gym, I can make gains in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm never past 300. And she goes, and I want you to explain this to the audience because I never really understand this. She goes, well, it's more about free testosterone than it is just the total number. She goes, the total number doesn't matter. Apparently, your free testosterone is high enough so that you get gains in the gym and you feel that pump and you're able to do everything you want to do, even though that overall number might not be high. Start explaining, Doc.
Yeah, there's two other components. So there's your total testosterone, which travels around your bloodstream on SHBG. I call it the limo service for sex hormones, SHBG, but then some of that gets released and it's called free testosterone. That's just chilling in your blood and your cells are able to use that. And obviously that free stuff matters much more than your total because your body uses that. And there's another variable too, which is the receptor numbers. Like, how much receptors do you have? Because that's what actually picks up the testosterone. That's what grabs it out of your blood. So the free matters a lot. Your receptor numbers matter a lot. The only way to check your receptors is to look at genetics and things like that. You can't really do a blood test for receptors, or you can do it with a biopsy, but nobody's doing that except in research studies. But yeah, so you can have a real good testosterone sensitivity. And by the way, these plastics, these estrogens, these fragrances, they lower your estrogen sensitivity. They lower your total, they lower your free, and they lower the receptor numbers. That's what I write about in my book. I show that data in my book because it's a triple whammy. It's a triple problem with those estrogen chemicals that obviously you don't have that problem because you're avoiding those chemicals and you're exercising and you're eating healthy.
Yeah, I sweat every day. And, I do have plans on getting a sauna here at the house, but I sweat every day, whether, I don't sweat when I do anaerobics because I just don't. It's cool enough in my gym, or if I go into town, it's cool. But when I get on my bike or my rowing machine or my paddle erg or anything, sweat my ass off. So maybe all that helps. I want to go back a bit. You mentioned natural testosterone supplements versus, I talk to, I do consults. People can sign up for a consult with me whenever they want. And I have guys saying, yeah, I get the pellet shot in. I get,
Mm.
I put the gel on. I got the cream. I get the pill.
Mhm.
What can you explain all the different nuances? And then you mentioned something about natural.
Yeah, well, natural is just getting like eating healthy so your body makes the most testosterone that it can make and balances your hormones properly. Um, if you have avoided estrogen chemicals your whole life, and almost nobody has, but like some of the children these days have, because my kids have, so I've been careful about this with them, but then your natural levels are usually sufficient and very, very good, honestly. Um, but yeah, sometimes you either need some supplements, and again, supplements is a vague term, like everybody's a little different in that regard, and there's good quality ones, there's bad quality ones. Get some good ones. You don't want to be taking shitty supplements. Oftentimes that sets you back even more than just not doing anything.
Right.
Um, but the pellets, I'm not a huge fan. They they make more money on them, so a lot of doctors like to push the pellets. Uh, the injections are okay. My preference is when people use the bioavailable testosterone cream and just do it every day when they do TRT, testosterone replacement, because that's the most consistent levels. Again, it depends on your genes. Sometimes people have a little bit more aromatization and more estrogen from that process of using the cream every single day, and they need to do the injections. And I'm okay with that if they need it and it's transforming their life. A lot of the pharmaceutical companies are not proponents of testosterone replacement, because when men get on TRT and their health is in the dumps, usually they get on TRT and their health improves and they get off their prescription drugs because their blood pressure improves, and now they don't have depression and now they don't need Viagra and on and on. Like, the drug companies lose a lot of money. So there's a lot of quote unquote misinformation on this, and a lot of it's like we talked about before with the YouTube and the Instagram. There's a lot of shadow banning, a lot of deplatforming. In fact, whenever I talk about testosterone, Vinny, on YouTube, they always demonetize my videos. It's like testosterone and cannabis. If I bring up those two things and go into it, boom, I get demonetized. And it's like, why would that be triggering demonetization, right? It's because it's hurting the pharmaceutical bottom line.
Yeah. Look, I don't know if, all right. This guy, who am I thinking of? Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Mm-hmm.
takes his shirt off. He starts doing
Mm-hmm.
push-ups, right?
Yeah, looks good.
And yeah, the guy looks amazing. He's got it going on. He's in his 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And people start writing to me, hey, is he on TRT? And it's like, so I looked it up and I said, yeah, the guy, he's open about it. He takes TRT and this and that, and the whole thing.
Yep.
So then everyone starts saying, should I be on TRT? I'm like, okay. And I
Yeah.
can't say no, right? I
Yeah,
don't tell anyone
sure.
no. I always tell them, look, it's not right for me. I worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what should we worry about? Let me bait you just a bit. I hear it causes. I'm just giving you what they say.
Mm-hmm.
I want. It can cause a hardening of the arteries. It can cause prostate enlargement and maybe even prostate cancer. And then I've heard other studies say, oh, it actually improves prostate. So
Mm-hmm.
you hear all of this stuff back and forth, and then you get someone like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who we know is, like a really healthy guy. He's against every vaccine that's ever come out and all this kind of stuff, and
Sure.
has data to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's right or wrong, and I'm not here to debate that, but where are we with, will this drug be good for us or bad for us?
Yeah, I think generally, if you have super low testosterone, it's better for you to get it up, whatever it takes, because it's anti-inflammatory. Testosterone helps your body to, recover from training and stuff. If your testosterone is super low, it's easy to get overtrained. Doesn't mean you're for sure going to. It's just easier to get overtrained and have more inflammation. You're kind of on the edge of a cliff. You don't have to jump off the cliff and be into inflammation land, but you can, your body, like testosterone decreases, it inhibits interleukins, for example. Interleukins are a type of inflammatory cytokine there. So there's a lot of side benefits. And remember, cancer is generally triggered by inflammation.
Right.
Like if you get sunburned all the time, that's a lot of inflammation on your skin. Eventually you get skin cancer. If you get I don't know, cigarette smoke in your lungs for years and years and years. That's a lot of inflammation in your lungs. Eventually you get lung cancer, right? Like you want things that lower inflammation. And in terms of the heart disease, it actually protects your arteries. There was a lot of medical school textbooks and things that said that testosterone causes heart disease because it raises your cholesterol, but that's been debunked with the whole cholesterol thing. They just assumed it caused heart attacks because it raises your cholesterol and thickens your blood a little bit, but it actually protects against heart disease. They did a study with 80,000 people that do TRT, and they have less heart disease, far less heart disease. So I think it's protective for heart disease too.
It's just interesting, depending on who you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was talking to my doctor because I'm always trying to get information to help the people I do consults with, right? And the doctor, I had this this nodule on one of my testicles, so I had to go get it cut out. And I said, Doc, honest opinion, where are we on testosterone for men, as a therapy?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, he goes, I don't deal with that much, but one of my partners here, the urology clinic, he's crazy about it. He's mad about it. It's like, well, why is that? He goes, he's done all the studies and he just can't find any reason why men should not do this. Right. So,
yeah.
Like I said, depending on who you talk to, you get all these different kind of.
Yeah, but that's true of soy too, right? Like there's a lot of people that think soy is great for you, and it's very clear that it acts like estrogen in your body. Everybody agrees with that, but some people say it's good estrogen, some people say it's bad estrogen, the soy estrogens. It's because they make a lot of money on soy and they do a lot of manipulation with the studies, right? It's hard to get a straight answer when you go into scientific studies because there's a lot of corruption and manipulation in certain fields. Like if you're reading a research paper on the topic of infrared light or something, there's probably no bias. It's probably pretty straightforward. If you're reading one on the topic of vaccines or I don't know, like testosterone or soy or cholesterol, yeah, you have to be really cautious because there's money being made on statins. There's billions of dollars at stake. There's going to be more room for shenanigans. It's tricky, and that's the unfortunate situation we have today.
So without giving young men drugs, what's our best way? And we're going to make this kind of the final piece of the podcast here. If we're having young men with more and more low testosterone, and they don't want to get a driver's license, and they don't want to leave their mom's basement, and we see this incel problem, we see all these different problems, right? And how do we do it? How do we fix the problem if we're not using drugs?
It's got to be holistic. It's got to be improve your health in general. And what does that mean? It means eat healthy, exercise, get good sleep, don't be stressed out, work hard. It's got to be holistic like that. Avoid all these fake estrogens, filter your drinking water. You know what I mean? It's not just one simple thing. If it was one simple thing, everybody would have high testosterone because it would be easy. But I do think that's the foundation, like get your vitamins, make sure they're good, eat a lot of meat. By the way, meat has a lot of red meat specifically has a lot of zinc, and zinc is probably one of the best supplements for raising your testosterone in a noticeable way. So things like that, I would start with the basics, just very holistic stuff your ancestors probably did for thousands of years.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And by the way, one of the places, and I've been meaning to ask you this for a long time, and because I just came back from the grocery store, I can ask you now. When I buy my meat, immediately I come home and I unwrap it and I let it dry out in the fridge for a day or two, right? I like to let it, dry age for a couple of days. But the other reason I do that is because they wrap it in this wax paper. I just assume that wax paper is a problem, just like everything else.
Yeah, well, there's two types of butcher paper. One of them is sprayed with plastic, and then one's sprayed with silicone. Silicone is totally fine. The butcher paper with silicone is great. If you have a whole cow that you buy from a farmer, or a half a cow or a quarter cow, or whatever, tell the butcher to wrap it with silicone butcher paper. They'll do that, And if your butcher won't do that, try and find a different butcher. But yeah, it's hit or miss on that one. Like, unless you know your butcher, unless you know your farmer. And I recommend people try and get their cow from like you know, a local farmer as much as they can. Obviously, it's not feasible for everybody in every situation all the time, but
Yeah.
but no, it's probably good. It's better than plastic, right? And the good news is it's not liquid. Liquids leach the most plastic. Liquids are the notorious they're notorious for absorbing a lot of plastic. Leach it.
Well, right now I have steelhead trout. You know, I just bought
Oh, cool.
or ago.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be eating that in about 2 hours.
Nice.
It's sitting in that paper, you know, for
Yeah.
better part of 3 hours. I'm okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know. I need those questions answered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Folks, go get the book, Estrogeneration. It's a fascinating read. You will never buy a new car again and want that new car smell. You know, there's so many things you'll learn in there where we just get this estrogen, this plastic in us all the time. Also, go check out, give the name of the consulting.
AJ Consulting Company. Mm-hmm.
ajconsultingcompany.com. Is it?
You got it. You got it. Yeah.
ajconsultingcompany.com. Go check it out. He fascinated me by just doing mine on the house. And Serena was very impressed with the whole thing. So AJ Consulting Company, go find out what's wrong with you by letting Dr. Anthony J tell you. You know what to do with us. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com, click through the banner. It puts a little coal on the fire, gets my train down the track. Also, we have the VinnieTortorich.com/VIP group opened again. And if you want to join in, go sign up, because by the end of this month, January, we're gonna cut it off again. And who knows when we might open it up again. So go right now, VinnieTortorich.com/VIP. And of course, when you go to Amazon, I'm going to have, you know, the Packer soap and all that stuff that we talked about here on the show. So on behalf of Dr. Anthony J, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.